Hey everybody, Riot Mortdog here, and Happy New Year. It's time for patches to resume, and yeah, we're back.
Happy New Year.
So first thing to note is TFT has moved to a different naming convention for their patches. Now that we're separate from League as far as like the naming goes here, because they're doing their seasons thing, we have our own naming convention. It's very easy. We are the 13th set. This is the third patch, TFT patch 13.3.
Excellent.
That's it. So moving forward, that's how you can expect our patch naming to go. This is patch TFT 13.3. Second thing to note is because this is the new year, we just got back, so we had to do this via micro patch, which means all of the patch changes we did were pretty much limited to
Can you turn up audio?
Enable, disable, or number changes, very slight things. There aren't many bug fixes, and there aren't many like any reworks or text changes, things like that. Those will have to come in the next patch in 13.4. That being said, because we have so much content in this game, it still ended up being a pretty big patch. So there's a lot to get into. Let's dive right in.
Is it cool if throw on captions? Sometimes I can't read it.
On the carousel, we've decided that the stage 3 carousel, showing up and having it be 6 cloaks, 2 armors, and a bow, not very fun.
Yes,
so
I agree.
We finally budged on this, and now we're going to have it be the same as stage 2 and 4 carousel. It works exactly the same now. There will always be one of each component, unless it's the like spatula frying pan thing.
Excellent.
But generally you can expect that there's going to be a tier or a sword or whatever you need. And so if you're in last place, hopefully you'll be able to get it. So yeah.
Okay.
And then secondly, the opening encounter. The set's been out for a while now. You guys all know how it works. We're speeding that up a bit to get you into the game quicker because playing more TFT is very fun. Let's
see.
go.
You know, it's actually nice
because on the trade side,
you know, in game dev, playtime does feel like it matters. So you could always cheese a few seconds by making it longer, but I appreciate that because I think TFT games could be cut down by like 5 minutes in my opinion, and I think that'd be good. I don't like that you have an hour and you can only play one game. I would prefer if you could squeeze in 2 games in 1 hour as opposed to, but I understand like why the length it is, the length it is.
6 Artillerist, which requires 2 emblems, still isn't quite worth the payoff when you hit it. So we're changing how many attacks you need to proc the missile from 4 to 3. Pretty big buff.
Yeah,
hopefully this gets buff. 6 Artillerist where we want it to be. Automata, definitely the thing that has kind of...
This is going to be one of the best 2 emblem pieces in the game that isn't like Rebels and stuff like that. It's very, very good already, I'm just saying.
Dominated as far as emblems go. You were always happy to get an Automata emblem because the 4-piece early was very good, and then the 6-piece late was insane. So we are going to nerf how tanky it is. The 4-piece is going to go from 60 to 55, and the 6-piece getting a really chunky nerf from 140 back to 100.
You can go 8
that being
twice
said,
in an hour.
We want to focus on bringing back the damage part of it. You should be excited when you get those 20 stacks and it fires, not just because you have 140 armor and MR. So we are going to buff the damage of 6 a little bit. That being said, I could see in future patches the damage even going higher.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how it works for now.
I mean, the thing about flat damage is that flat damage falls off late game because it doesn't scale with how everything is, how everything else is tankier and stuff in the late game. And so this 100 buff is not anywhere near enough to compensate for how less tanky your board is for 6 Automata. This is one of those things where 6 Automata is going to feel way worse. 40 armor and magic resistance, your techs are going to melt way quicker. Which is a good thing because 6 Automata was allowing you to play... I saw people fast 9 off of Cogmaw 1 because it's just like they have Automata on like some kind of 2-star frontline, and then they just like, you know, have Cogmaw hold infinite attack speed just to deal 1100 damage. So it might be one of those things where like maybe it still can be good, but like there's no way it's going to be like as oppressive. It's...
So this is meant to be a nerf overall. Automata should be weaker overall. Scrap is really, really close. We don't want to buff the shield amount or anything like that. It's really close. Some champions getting some love, but the shield duration, we launched at 30. That was too much. We put it back to 20. It's close. We're going to try 24 here. So that way the backline still gets a little bit more value out of that shield.
Okay.
Should help it out a bit. And then the 9-piece is going to get a small buff here.
Yeah,
it is a one of those chase traits, 2 emblems, a rumble, stuff like that. So it's going to get buffed from 60 to 65 per component. And then finally...
The reason why 9 scrap was pretty bad was because 9 scrap just gave you more tankiness, but then it would it would just expire anyways after 20 seconds. And so it'd be like, okay, cool. Now, I mean, you also got rating items, but that wasn't enough for a lot of like late game high cap situations to keep up with just like the BS of like other stuff, right? Like if you get 9 scrap, you could just lose to the 6 automata board because it was just like, well, the automata will like outstall you, and then you're naked. You lose all your shield, and then you're in the bad cases, you're stuck on Corky 1 and Echo 1. You're still not doing damage. So I've seen a lot of 9 scrap boards go bot 4 this patch, even though it can do well and win. But yeah, but like I've seen 9 scrap. It's generally pretty underwhelming. Also, I think we talked about Chem Baron, but like this needs to be nerfed. It's very good. I think a lot of people are sad because now is Chem Baron going to be playable? Probably at low elo. I would probably say no. Believe it or not, Chem Baron's actually barely playable at like mid to low elo right now. At high elo, it's extremely impressive, but if you're talking about like the enjoyment of the set, there's gonna be a lot of players who play TFT on, like my wife, for example. She never touches Chem Baron because she just doesn't think it's like viable at all for her. She's in silver, and so she's just like, yeah, I'll never play Chem Baron. Now it's like you're never ever gonna play Chem Baron if you're low elo. So.
Sorcerer here. I'll be real. Sorcerer's in rough shape. It needs more that we can do in a micro patch. It's probably going to get a bigger change in 13.4, but for now, there's no harm in cranking up the number to try to help it out a bit. So 4 piece is going to go from 50 to 55, 6 from 95 to 105, and 8 from 110 to 150. Very large
huge
buff.
Number.
Gonna be honest here, I still don't think it makes it viable, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong here, and so we'll see how this plays out. And then, there's some number where they do enough damage that they blow everything up so fast that it doesn't matter. That being said, I don't think this is it, so we'll see. But
I mean, 150 is a lot of AP. And remember, the important thing is we suck at itemizing in general. I personally think that a lot of these numbers are always taken at face value based off what we think and know about how to play it. But like at a certain point, if you just change the itemization a little bit, all of a sudden it might be like extremely good. Yeah, sorcerers, I agree with T-Lights in chat. I think sorcerers 150 AP is like a lot, man. That has to turn Nami 2 and Swain 2 into like actual straight up demons. If you really think about it, like maybe we haven't figured out the build, but like, I mean, a sorcerer doesn't give you much flexibility, but you guys get what I'm saying. It has to do something. It can't be bad.
I'll try to at least, if you decide to play it, you're not as punished, And then Chem Baron. Chem Baron's in an awkward state. Right now we're discussing what we want to do with this trait, if there's any bigger changes. But for now, what we're looking at is if you have an emblem and you have a really good start and you get the cash out, it's insane and unsurmountable. The win rates of the augments, the win rate of some of these items is an unacceptably high level. Yeah. So we do have to bring that down. That being said, we could see a world in a future patch where we remove the emblem completely. So we are at least discussing that just to keep you up to date. But for now, we're going to do a very light nerf to the 400 cash out. The 400 cash out is only going to lose stuff that you'll barely notice, where it's like, oh, you don't get a Silco with your items, or you don't get a Savika with your items. But generally, you're still the items aren't really changing at 400. So 400 got to slap on the wrist. 500 is where the big nerf is. 500, you're going to lose quite a bit of the value here. The stuff like, hey, no 2 Savikas to go with it, or no 2-star Silco to go with it, and you're still going to get those perfected items. So the value is going to go down quite a bit.
Wow. Okay.
And then in addition, 7 of the 8 perfected items are getting nerfed. Now, these aren't Omega kill the item nerfs, but they're definitely the item's not going to auto win any more nerfs. So you can see here, destabilized Chem Tank, less HP and armor. Executioner's Chain Blade, less AD, less durability and damage amp. Piltover Hex Armor, less armor and MR. And the cooldown, how often you can proc that AoE explosion, getting cut in half. Shimmer Bloom, the heal and shield goes down, as well as how often you can give the buff away. Unleash Toxins, the AP goes from 45 to 30. The stun duration down to 0.5. Realistically, I think the stun needs to go away from this item.
Yes,
just be the wave and the damage. But for now, this is what we could do.
Oh, if they actually kill the emblem, then you're not going to have the Cogma interaction anymore.
Less true damage, less damage reduction, less zombie health. And then Voltaic Saber, less Omnivamp, and more damage instances to proc it. So all of these items going down in power. That being said, and before anyone's like, oh, I still see Shimmer like or Chem Baron winning games, I think it's still going to win games. I think in the right hands, it will still win games. We're still going to see it go, do well, especially if you get 600 cash out. But this is a nerf. Like, you're going to see less winning. You're going to see the win rate go down a lot. That's the intention. So we'll see how it plays out. But like I said, we don't consider our work done here. This is sort of the stopgap for the next 2 weeks.
Okay, and I think this is actually a really important change because just to give you guys context of how insane the Chem Baron is, if you look at the Chem Baron emblem, we've never actually seen something like Chem Baron. Oh, hi. We're doing the patch notes. Let me explain, Levi, real quick, why Chem Baron is OP. Well, you see, we've never actually had an emblem for a Fortune or Mercenaries thing average this high in the stats, where it literally averages a 4.2 with an insane win rate, like at that scales as you get better at the game. GM plus is 40% and it averages a 4. In the past, Mercenaries and Fortune and everything else was it was like a straight 5. And so it's way too consistent at a baseline and it's way too good at the ceilings. There you go. There's your TFT lesson for the day. Okay, and remember, no gambling. At least until you're 3, because then you can play FIFA. Okay, I need my microphone back, man. No, he's in the phase where he grabs and holds on to everything. He has something to say. Oh, now he's laughing. All right. Yeah, we've never actually had the emblem. Just to give you a snapshot of why it's so OP, it's because it unlocks so much powerful item interaction. But I will say that it would feel really bad. It would feel really bad for them to put this much effort into a new set of items and it's just completely unplayable all set, unless you're like Masters Plus. That would just feel bad. But he's right. These are unacceptably high. He's right. 85%, 80%, 75. This is like he said it's unacceptably high. I agree. It should not feel like these are guaranteed victories. So I would cut these in half, but then make it easier to play. And I think maybe removing Chem Baron emblem is like a good. I never thought about that. I mean, that's why they get paid the big bucks, I hope. But like, I never thought about like that should be the solution. But it actually solves many problems, in my opinion. That actually could be pretty good, because then it turns it into like a situation where you actually have to have risk, but then you can pay out, and they could afford to keep it where it is.
All right, on the champ side, Powder 1 and 2, kind of disappointing, kind of holding back Scrap early, kind of forcing Family into a lost streak spot. Doesn't really help Ambusher much. So Powder 1 and 2, the fall off damage of the AoE explosion is going to get buffed back to what it should be. She might need more than this, but going light for now.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Singed.
Personally.
This is meant to be the Renata comp nerf, the biggest part of the Renata comp nerf.
Yes.
Singed, I was wrong on Singed. I thought he was going to be worse than he ended up. Turns out he's quite good. In fact,
insane.
The best, considering he's a 1 cost and you can get him early, and then you 4-star him sometimes. His durability was pretty wild, not to mention the attack speed he granted. So he is going to have to get brought down to be, he's supposed to be worse than Leona and Rel and Loris. Right now he's not. And so he's getting a pretty big nerf here. Spell durability going from 50-50, 55-60 to 45-45, 50-50. So, yeah, especially 4-star Singed. Very big nerf to 4-star Singed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
All right, Steb and Trundle, you're going to see a few tanks get like mana buffs. We just want more of the tanks to be viable and exciting here. So stuff like Steb and Trundle, they're getting their mana cost reduced. This also helps their hero augment, which needed some help. So
by a lot.
They should be a little more fun tanks to open up with.
With Combat Medic, because of the way it works, this guy is going to be a beast. Just don't sleep on the fish. Don't sleep on the fish, man. I'm just saying. I almost beat a 10 Rebel board with Steb. Now, granted, it was a different. Everything had to go perfect for that. Perfect positioning, the way the game played out. But I'm just saying that don't sleep on the fish, man.
And then Zyra was pretty hard to get working.
And Dishop thinks Trundle was already very good.
She had Sorcerer trait, which was rough. Experiment, which can be hard to get into. Just kind of worse than a lot of the other 1-cost AP options. So she gets a small buff here. I think this will make Zyra openers pretty good, actually. So don't sleep on Zyra next patch.
Yeah, and also this is, I said it, I think, when I was reading it, but Zyra 3 is actually kind of played in Urgot reroll because Tristana could be pretty unreliable due to how contested she is as an emissary, as well as like she's not that important if you're not able to scale her or have items for her. So people are actually playing Zyra. Oh, also because of item diversity. If you're going for like swords and everything like that for Urgot, you get a bunch of AP. You end up carrying Zyra. So this actually could be like a buff to the Urgot reroll.
All right, Camille. The last patch, the nerfs hurt Camille. Now she's not quite as good as she should be. Time to slowly bring her back up. The idea here is like a Camille 2 and a Nocturne 2 should be about as equally exciting if you get them on like 2-1.
I see.
They're not.
They're not.
And so Camille is going to do more damage, mostly at 1 and 2 star here. 3 star is only a minor buff. We can't go too ham and buff too many parts of Enforcer and Ambusher, as you'll see later.
You buffed a bunch of
But for now, this should help her out a little bit. Leona, much like Steb and Trundle, gets a mana cost reduction to help her be a little tankier.
Very big.
This should help. Not that Academy needs the help, but early Academy will get some help here, which is already good. So Academy openers I'd expect to be very good next patch. But also like a 6 Sentinel line that rerolls and plays around Leona should be better instead of Singed. Renata...
Yeah, so the problem with Leona is that she's basically useless whenever her ability is not up, and her ability only lasts for like 3 seconds. And so this should help her significantly. I'm not entirely sure about the way it interacts with mana lock or anything like that, so I have to actually like study that a little bit more. But this should make Leona a lot better, and I actually think Academy might be the best opener in the game now because they're buffing their front line. So now you just get like an unkillable Leona, and yeah, like you still they didn't nerf Lux, so
actually pretty happy with where Renata is. As I mentioned, we're already hitting that comp with the Singe nerf. That being said, the shielding is just a little over, just a little. So at 2 star, it's getting a tiny nerf, and at 3 star in particular, getting about a 10% shielding nerf. So a little less shielding from Renata, but damage-wise, we're happy with her. We like that comp. We're not trying to kill that comp.
Okay.
Zeri still continues to be in an awkward spot, getting some more base AD, hopefully opening up some Firelight options if you want to try reroll Zeri, play around Watcher, get an emblem, stuff like that. And then Ziggs ended up being just a little too good, better than Cassiopeia.
A little
so
too
the mini
good.
bomb damage, we're going to undo the buff from last patch. He still has the main bomb buff, so he still does a lot of damage.
It's a little too good.
A little less on the splash, a little less randomly killing your backline.
Okay, so I said this earlier, and I think this is going to be the video that goes onto YouTube, but Ziggs was so good. He single-handedly made Black Rose... he basically kept Black Rose afloat this patch. If Ziggs didn't exist, Black Rose would struggle so much on stage 4 and even part on stage 5, because then you'd be stuck on like, I have to hit Silco, and then Silco, everyone knows what happens when you're trying to solo carry Silco 1. And Ziggs ends up actually giving you the damage you need to survive. When China was first playing the patch 3 weeks ago, they thought Black Rose was awful, like a B- C tier comp, because they weren't playing around Ziggs at the time because it was still a new patch. And then when they figured that out, and they're realizing that it was actually pretty solid as a way to carry you through. This dude was performing at a 4 cost level at 2 cost. So he was really, really important. And so now nerfing him is justified, but a little bit sad, because we'll see how that actually plays out the rest of the Black Rose line. Because as you guys know, Black Rose lost a lot. They don't have Visionary as much anymore. And you'll see what they do with the Lease, but it's a pretty big deal. Zeri, actually, believe it or not, there's been builds. I've lost a Zeri reroll a handful of times this patch. I don't know how consistent it is, but I've seen people play like Rageblade Gambler Zeri, and then like with an opener with Artifact, all that shimmers, and it actually did pretty good. So I actually think Zeri is low-key pretty underrated. We don't have a build for her because there's just like no data. We looked at it, there's only like 200 games of it at like relevant sample size. So the thing is, like, if you know, but if you don't know, you're clueless, and you're like, okay, they're buffing Zeri, that probably doesn't do anything. I think she's probably like the most divided like 2 cost of like, does she even do anything? Not. There's some players who know that.
A little less.
Oh, and also Renata deserves to get nerfed. In fact, I don't know if this changes that much, but like, but the Singe change is a big deal. But the Renata change itself, honestly, it's probably, it just makes it that probably like your mid game's a little bit less consistent, but
Flash, a little less randomly killing your backline. 3 costs. Cassiopeia, as I mentioned, kind of worse than Ziggs. So gonna get some attack speed to get her casting more frequently, stacking up that Dominator, getting her big part of her spell. So this should help Cassiopeia feel like a 3 cost, not a 2 cost. Melee Gangplank,
True.
similar story, kind of hasn't really been standout. You know, if you have a Violet 2 or a Gangplank 1, the Violet 2 feels so much better. This is to try to help undo that. Gangplank should feel good as a melee unit, especially if you have good items on
Huge
him.
buff.
So the spell heal's going up quite a bit here. This is a lot of spell heal.
buff.
And the spell damage up a bit. So I think an early Gangplank with like 2 Form Swapper going to be very good, or some Pit Fighter. So don't sleep on Gangplank melee now.
Yeah, and this actually anchors 2 things. It anchors not just the scrap openers, because if you get GP now you can play scrap. Powder got buffed. Six got nerfed, but whatever. Trundle got buffed. So now a scrap opener, you actually have. You might want to play melee GP now, just because he does a lot of damage. And pit fighters in general, just as a vertical, are a little bit underrated. And that actually makes it so that GB can be like a really good item holder for like the melee items. And he might now. I was talking about this before, but I think he might be the best melee 3 cost now, as opposed to Swain. Swain out of a box is really good. Out of an orb on stage 1 is really good if you can play around him early, because he's just hard to deal with and you get conquer stacks. Now GP might be the best, but we'll see. Also, Cassio, someone said 0.5% attack speed buff is not a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. The end. It's a huge deal. The end.
I think he's going to be quite good next patch. Loris, poor Loris. I wish this guy deserved better in the show and deserves better now. I wish he was tankier than he is. We're giving him a pretty big spell shield buff. I'm hoping this makes him good early.
Oh, 75?
I still think Loris 3 won't be good enough, but we'll see.
Oh, man.
But also can't buff Enforcer too much. So going light for now. My guess is he needs a little more. We'll see, though. But I'm hoping Loris out of a box will actually be pretty tanky now.
One thing about Loris is that he's actually really flexible and goes into a lot of boards. And I think he's one of the 3 cost people that people don't roll around. Like, if you're playing on stage 4 right now, a lot of people don't play around Loris and Rel, and they are like very easy units to upgrade, and they anchor your front line, so you can stop feeling like you have to hit Garen 2 and Elise 2 and Alawi 2. Like, these are like units you can play around. And then also they're buffing in yet another Enforcer. So I'm just telling you, like, they're buffing Loris, Twisted Fate, Steb, and Camille. So I know that it's not about quantity of buffs purely, but these are all sizable buffs. Enforcer early game might be really nasty now, especially if you get like a 4 Enforcer with an emblem start.
Smeech. I love it when I Smeech all over the place. Unfortunately, Smeech doesn't Smeech hard enough, so we're going to help him Smeech out a little bit more by increasing or lowering his mana cost so he can Smeech more often, doing more damage, jumping around, Smeeching everybody. Should be good.
No, not good. Not good. Thank God my son exited the room. Can't use that language, man. This is supposed to be a family-friendly patch rundown. I hate when units like Smeech are good. I just hate it. Do you guys love when these inconsistent unit targeting just ends up jumping on your backline and assassinating your units, but when you play it, it doesn't work?
And finally, Twisted Fate, same thing. We can't buff too much of Enforcer all at the same time, but like Loris TF reroll should be a thing, should be a comp that exists. It really doesn't, so TF's going to get a damage buff to both yellow and red card here. All right, Echo. Echo is another 4 cost that, like, he exists. Sometimes you, like,
yeah, I don't even know if this buff
put him
is
in,
necessary.
kind of, but you're not really excited by him. So this mana cost should hopefully help him cast more often.
He's very exciting.
It's a pretty big buff. You know, put some Hodges on him, Edge of Night, get him to cast a bunch, heal a bunch, cast more, do a lot more damage. So this should make Echo a lot more threatening and make Firelight comps something you could play around.
Yeah, they're buffing Zeri as well. They're buffing all the ambushers, although I don't know if you want to tempo into Echo for ambusher. I mean, it could be that all of them are just good enough at the baseline, so now you get to Echo, and now Echo caps, you know, your Smeech reroll really, really hard. They're also buffing Scrap. They actually buffed pretty much everything around Echo, and you know, I was making the joke that just like in Arcane, Echo's the only hero and everyone else around him sucks and is useless. It's very much the same thing right now. I actually think Echo's kind of good at the moment, but like I just think that everything else is kind of lame. All you need to do is one time in a Rebel comp, put items on Rebel Echo 2, and you can kind of see him actually do something. And you're like, oh my god, this unit actually kind of popped off.
Elise backline. It's a silly comp. It can work, but it's really hard to play. You don't see much of it in high elo. So at least going to get a 10% buff to the backline here. Obviously, she's still got way more utility frontline. I don't expect this to like radically shift things, but if you find yourself in a position like a 6 bruiser comp and you need a backline, at least should feel more worth it.
I like that. I like that. This probably doesn't change anything, by the way, because the reality is when you hit Elise, her stun is too valuable, but I want to be in a position where if I have too much frontline with Elise, I have the option to, and I think this is important. So
Twitch. Twitch is in a weird spot where like the capped out Twitch boards can do very well, but it's really hard to get him there. You need a lot of frontline to buy him the time to get his spell off. His mana cost is really high. So we're giving him a pretty big buff here by lowering the mana cost to 40, which means he'll get to that state where he's pew-pewing all over the place. And so this should help Twitch be not as much of a comp that requires a high roll, and something that like an early Twitch can actually be pretty threatening.
Oh god.
That's the hope.
Oh god. This is buffing someone's mana this much is crazy. It's just it's a huge. Now I get it. Twitch is a giant meme. Who wants to actually play Twitch right now? Maybe if you're like an off meta Andy, right? That loves playing like uncontested stuff because you just love feeling big brained. Maybe, but like no one out here is. Do you understand that bronze, like Twitch's condition is like bronze for life, or like an emblem, and like bronze for life? That just means it's not that Twitch is good. It's that bronze for life is that OP. Even Twitch is good with bronze for life. So this is a huge buff. Twitch can't be bad, is what I'm saying. Also, I freeze framed at a really unflattering pose for Mort Dog, but that's a good one. That's a good one.
Here, so Twitch. Hopefully on the same page as like Corki after this. 5 costs. Okay, big nerf here we have to talk about.
Yes, this one's huge.
Jace is... Okay, what would happen
paragraph.
Is he would cast... Like, let's say you put the gem in the front line. The gem dies, and then Jace casts his spell. The gem appears and gives the buff.
Yeah.
That was never the intent. The intent was, if gem alive, give buff, else summon gem.
Oh.
Now it works that way. So if you want the buff from Jace, whether it be the attack speed or the shield, you need to keep the gem alive. This is a nerf. This is a big nerf. Like, you know, you're not going to get like free attack speed from backline Jace all the time, or you're not getting a free shield from frontline.
Massive nerf.
So this is a nerf to Jace, but now it works the way you'd expect and the way that was intended. To compensate, though, frontline Jace is just kind of underperforming. Pretty much everyone goes backline Jace. He's just that much better. So frontline Jace getting a pretty big buff here. He's going to hit his main target quite a bit harder here. Almost a 20% buff on that main target.
It is huge.
And a small buff to the side. Anything it passes through will also take some damage. So hopefully frontline Jace can be kind of scary.
This is really sad for people who play the AD line, because anyone who plays the AD line recognizes that Jace was actually really good to play for on stage 4 and 5 because you can stabilize on 1-star Jace. And that's really important for your flexibility on roll downs, especially when you're in a situation where like everyone was going for Corki and you just couldn't really hit anything else. So like you could always hit a Jace. And that also unlocks different boards, like not only Academy, but you could play into form swappers, or you can just do Jace flex, put him in an emissary board, put him in a Black Rose board. There's very flexible and dynamic, and it's largely due to the amount of utility that you have. This is a huge nerf to like 80 flex, which kind of sucks. Sucks a lot, actually. I kind of hope that he's still really good. Maybe he is still really good, and I'm undervaluing just base Jace, but this is a really big nerf.
LeBlanc is she's in a good spot. She's really close. But the time it takes for her, once she casts her spell, to get those 3 empowered auto attacks out is a little too long. So we're raising her base attack speed to help her get those out, get back to casting, and hopefully help her out a little bit.
Okay.
And then finally, Malzahar. Malzahar in our data is kind of the worst performing. Going very light on the buffs here. We don't need to go back to the launch patch. That's not the goal. But he's going to do, +1 on his tick damage, which is most of his damage. And then the wave is going to hit a little bit harder. The wave isn't much of his damage anyway, but at least it'll help him maybe chew through some frontline a little bit. So hopefully this gets Malzahar up to the other 5 costs, and you can be excited about hitting him early.
All right. LeBlanc buff. She's just not the 5 costs that you're really excited about. She's good in certain contexts as a secondary, but she doesn't actually do a lot, so this helps. This also makes her even better with Rage Blade. A lot of people put Shojin on LeBlanc, but I'm pretty sure her best mana item is Rage Blade, so this is helping a lot there. Mainly because she's mana locked, I believe, during the show for the cast, so the Shojin actually not helping her nearly as much as Rage Blade is to get the follow-up casts. Someone asked about Jace not scaling from 1-star to 2-star. You do scale, it's just your base stats improve from 2-starring. So that's the reason why they're not giving you more, because you upgrade the AD. It uses your base AD for your stats, and you get more AD, a lot of AD for 2-starring. So you don't need to give it. And I mean, more buffing Malzahar. Color me surprised. But I mean, I do agree. Malzahar 1 with this buff might actually be good. Malzahar 2 is already pretty solid, actually. I think most people have caught on by now towards the second half of the patch that Malzahar 2 is actually quite solid immediately to play. He's basically as good as he was at Malzahar 1 on the launch patch. And Malzahar 1 was busted. So yeah, Malzahar 2 is totally fine.
And then finally, 6 costs. Post the change where, you know, the 6 cost appearance rate is where we want it. We're happy with the appearance rate of 6 costs. We're not happy with the payoff, though. They're not as strong as we want them, and they're not strong enough in the right places. So let's start with Mel. Mel, you're like happy to get her casting and Banished Mage and Cheese out of placement. But like, if you have a blue buff on a Heimer 1 or a Mel 1, the Heimer's better, and that's not okay. Mel's supposed to be the equivalent of like a 2-star 4 cost.
Easy, thank you.
You should be excited when you have items for her and see her crank out some damage.
Okay.
That's kind of the point. So Mel's going to get a pretty big buff here to her damage at both 1 and 2-star. It's more than a 10% buff here, so she should be able to do more damage. Wow, which is good. Warwick is similar. His experiment bonus, kind of not great. So if you decide to put him in the experiment hex, which usually you want to, it's exciting to put your 6 cost on the hex. Or at least now maybe you'll get some stuns. He's also going to heal more, which will help him stay alive, and up his damage in Blood Frenzy. So again, these champs should feel exciting to get. Right now they feel okay to get. A little bit of a change here. Now,
Mel's actually a pretty decent damage dealer at 1-star, so this is a pretty sizable buff for her. And now I guess you always have an AP out if you're playing, even if you're playing AD and you're like, what do I do with all this stuff? You can always slam and hope for Mel. And then Warwick. I mean, I don't even really feel like the 1.5 second experiment bonus is that nearly as big as the fact that he just like heals a lot and gets a lot more stats. So yeah, Warwick will probably actually be a lot better. I'm actually excited to play Warwick because I feel like he's actually not even that bad, but he has such a bad reputation that anytime I play Warwick on the board, everyone just types question marks and like weaker. And it's like, it's not even true. Like Warwick actually can improve your board. I promise you guys. But everyone's convinced that like I made my board worse by playing Warwick on it. It's because like they don't know how to play Warwick, or like he's not visually like paying off either in the damage charts or anything like that. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. The big standout for me is that they're happy with the frequency of 6 costs. That's interesting to me. I feel like 6 costs could be tweaked a lot, but in terms of the systems, like I think that it's right now, I guess they're just feeling like they like that the way it's gated behind Anomaly and only level 10 buff sits. I don't want 6 costs to be more frequent, but I wouldn't be unhappy if they were less frequent, if that makes sense. I guess they want it to be common enough though that people who play only like 10 games can actually see them. So I guess it's different design goals, I guess.
The last one here is Victor. Victor is obviously currently the most
what about that
popular
guy?
6 cost. We want to do bigger changes to Victor because right now he's too much utility to just throw in a comp.
Yeah,
kill his Shred and Sunder need to go.
Yes.
But you put items on him, it doesn't actually feel that good. It feels pretty bad. So we're probably going to shift that in the next patch. As I mentioned, we're kind of can't do much here with a micro patch. But just calling it out here that Victor, we're not like super thrilled with him. We just can't do much right now. So
okay.
There you go.
2 more weeks of Victor, baby.
All right, items. Short thing here is a couple less built items getting a buff here. Deathblade, damage jump goes up by 2%. Even Shroud, the armor and MR won't fall off quite so fast, so it can actually be a tank item for a bit. Ionic Spark, 50 more health, so you don't feel like you're losing a tank item slot just to have an Ionic Spark.
Yeah.
And then Hurricane, always a weird item. It's not a bad item, but certainly no one's excited to build it right now. I love building it when you get the Augment. I think it's quite good. but there you go. That's going to be a buff to Hurricane. And then we have artifacts. Artifacts are something that we're going to have to keep adjusting our frameworks on like where they want to be. But for now, we do have to hit kind of the outliers. Fish Bones, we know about Fish Bones Nocturne.
Yeah.
It's going to lose 20% of its AD, but gain 10% attack speed.
Big nerf.
This is also, so like if you want to end up putting it on a champion who benefits from AP, it won't feel as wasted. And it should, like, you know, Nocturne scales well with AD. So this is overall a nerf to the item for like Nocturne, but kind of neutral for the item.
Yeah.
Gambler's Blade, a little too good, especially on Kog'Maw. Gambler's Blade's going to lose 10% base AS. Rapid Fire Cannon, similar. Good on Mordekaiser. Nocturne, it's going to lose some AS. Silvermere Dawn, really, really close, but still a little too good. Minus 10 armor and MR. Collector, minus 5 AD. Mostly, you know, all that Shimmer's nerf kind of going on there. And then Trenchcoat. Trenchcoat, we have more work to do. Right now, Trenchcoat is a really unhealthy item in that it's a check of like, do you have the other items it interacts with in a gross way? Do you have a Zanya's, an Edge of Night, a Steris?
Very gross.
Or the Ascension Gem? If so, enjoy your like +2 placements. If not, it's okay.
True.
So for now, we're gonna nerf it pretty hard, but let it be known that we do feel like we have more work to do here. So for now, the break apart point's gonna go up pretty dramatically here from 50% to 66%, and the clones will have less health. This is a pretty big nerf to the item. I don't know if the item will still be bad in those cases where you have like Zanya's and stuff. It might still be good. If you don't have those, I expect it to be a pretty bad item though. This is meant to be a pretty big nerf for now until we have a better solution.
Thank goodness.
The item will be worse, which is good. It's frustrating.
Yes. I mean, it's a cool item conceptually, but it's I think it's played its course. I think it's played out its course. We've seen all kinds of crazy combos, whether it's like insane value stuff. We saw it play, like for example, when it was Lysandra, you trenchcoat Lysandra, she would break apart, and then she would teapot units. You would get a bunch of gold for killing it, so it was like insane value and CC. We've seen super carries like Fiora and Bessa and Vi and everything like that. We've seen it terrorize with like, you know, ultimate hero with 4 stars. So like we've seen it be a utility item as well. It's just like, I think it's kind of like played out, and it's just like annoyingly powerful. So I approve of that. I'm surprised by some of these buffs. I think Even Shot's actually a great buff because I think this item in general has been underperforming a lot since set 10. But like situationally, it was like pretty good. Now it just feels like less bad. Also, this actually makes Belt even better. Belt's already the best component in the game, so now Belt gets even better. You have one better slam now by like a lot. Ionic Spark, I didn't even think it needs this buff. I think it's a really powerful item, and so like there should be some downsides to slamming Ionic Spark compared for tanks for AP comps, but whatever. Runes is not a bad item at all. It's actually interesting that they're buffing this. This might make like the Ezreal Fast 9 with a Leona opener, Ezreal Fast 9 with Academy. If Academy is giving you a Runins and you have Category 5, it's like it could be a straight Fast 9. But yeah, everything else pretty good stuff. I mean, these are all justified. Collector's way too good. Gambler's Blade's way too good if you get the right setup for it, so on and so forth. It makes sense.
But the item will be worse, which is good. It's frustrating. All right, Augments. Aurelia carry augment. She gets more attacks.
Oh, one note about Deathblade. Deathblade's already the best AD item on a lot of AD champions. It's even better than Infinity Edge. It's just that it's hard to get Deathblade and something else. So Deathblade also didn't need a buff, but whatever.
Speed. Sweet. That should be more fun augment. It's not bad by any means. We even saw it win at Macau. But it could use some more love. Dumbify. This is a minor change. This isn't going to change much when you have an 8,000 health dummy. Having it go from 8,000 to 8,250 to 8,500. Who cares?
Yeah.
So now it'll at least go from 8,000 to 9,000 to 10,000.
That's a lot of HP.
Up a little bit better.
A lot
Still
of HP.
Kind of a mediocre augment, but there you go. Glass Cannon, the minus 20% health for backline was too punishing. Now it's only 10%. Kingslayer, this is a weird augment, really hard to play, but when you do, it should be worth it. So now if you beat somebody that has more health than you, you're going to get 5 gold, which is pretty solid for a silver augment. So Lost Streak into this augment can do some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Lone Hero. Yeah, definitely didn't get any DMs about this one all Christmas break.
Oh, no.
we're disabling Lone Hero.
He definitely got DMs.
The idea of the augment was sound, of like, hey, your Ambessa is the final one alive, and they make a comeback. In execution, trying to get it onto a specific unit was really hard, and the only time you could do it was with specific builds that ended up being very toxic and very unfun.
Yeah, like what?
And then combine that with Lux's monolock issue or
Yeah.
Vladimir. Like, I don't think we want you having a silver augment that says lock your Vladimir 3 in a corner until you have 3 Archangels build up. Like, this is just not a healthy play pattern. And even if we could do stuff like change the attack speed and lower the durability, it's too hard to play. So for now, it's gone. I don't expect this augment to come back anytime soon.
Oh.
Even when it's good, it's not good. So yeah.
I do think Lone Hero creates a really memorable. Like, I think everyone's gonna talk about this set, and they're gonna remember every set. There's a couple of comps that people remember. Lone Hero Lux is gonna go down in the history books as one comp to remember set 13, and that's actually like a fun thing for memory lane. Like, it's fun to reflect on like the BS crazy creative stuff. And I don't want that. I don't want every comp to just be like, well, this is a reroll comp. It's 3-star. It does some damage. It heals a little bit. I just feel like that's like not as exciting as some of the really cool creative stuff with Lone Hero, that stuff like Lone Hero creates. So I hope they don't shy away from that, because it's like fun to reminisce about how terrible Lone Hero Lux is in like a couple months, even next week.
Pretty fun augment. Pretty risky though, and the risk isn't quite worth the payoff. So 10 more gold there. Cool. Team
Mark
building,
it for the year
get that
in review.
second duplicator 2 turns earlier. Sweet. And trolling the Trundle Hero augment. He already got the mana buff, which is good, and he'll get a little bit more attack speed because trolling is fun. Enjoy Trundle.
Trolling, as you guys, I already talked about, just everybody thinks trolling is good. I still have never clicked Survivor and top forward with it. I only clicked it once. I guess I did it one time, so I've never seen it pay off, so I'm not expecting that to be really good. And team building, that's a pretty big reroll buff for silver. It's nice.
Gold augments. Another anomaly is a really fun augment, but kind of underperforming. So we're going to put more base stats on the item, just so that when you lose an item slot, you don't feel quite as bad. 100 more health, 5 more AD, 5 more AP. Arcane Retribution. This augment asks you to put all your sorcerers in the front line except one, so that they explode and do 400 damage.
Yeah. Not great.
Yeah, not a great augment. So this one's gone.
Units is bad.
Just really awkward design. So, yeah. Cloning Facility, underperforming a bit. Kind of like the mirror artifact we had to buff. So the clones will get 10% more health and 10% less mana reduction. I think this augment's going to be great now for win streaking. If you have a strong 2-star champion on 2-1, take this augment. I think it's going to be really good.
I can see that.
Contested. This augment's weird. If you look in our data, the augment looks fine. But what I will say is having an augment that sort of prays that a bunch of people also played Rel or Aurelia, or Draven, so that you can get 4 gold a turn, which is OP, or sometimes an insane high roll 6 gold a turn.
Yeah.
Kind of unhealthy. So we just don't really like the pattern this created.
Aww.
So we're just going to disable it. It does a lot of the same things other augments do, but in a weirder, more complicated, and less healthy way. So
yeah, but you had cute little legends floating around your left side bench, and it was a fun little mini game. I don't know, it was just like a fun little mini game to do, just like to buy and look at the what unit was being played. I don't know, I guess it's just interesting things to look at. It's like, oh, how many people played Zeri this game? Wait, what? 3 people played Zeri on their board? I don't know, it's just random things you can do. I enjoyed that part of it, and also I was saying that it's also a hidden OP, because you're not directly, it's not in your face with how much gold your opponents are getting with it every round, because it's at the beginning of the round and everyone's looking at their own board, so it's more discreet, as opposed to like, bam, Artifact Nocturne, bam, Lone Hero Lux, and you're just kind of like in your face OP. So I'm gonna miss this augment, even though it very much is OP, and I would prefer that they would nerf it as opposed to disable it.
Vlad Hero Augment, 3 mana goes to 5 mana per auto, so Vlad should be casting a lot more often. Should synergize him more with the items we want him to be synergized with, like something like Ginsu's. Family Crest, small nerf here, no longer grants a Violet. That augment is really good. Being able to hit 4 family early is very powerful. Still will be.
Yeah.
Forward Thinking, we're giving it 10 more gold. I love this augment. This augment's really fun if you're in the right spot for it, but pretty hard to make work.
What is the right spot?
We also know there's another change that needs to happen, which is when you have 100 gold coming to you, it takes forever.
Yes.
We're going to try to speed that up in a future patch, but for now, plus 10 gold. Glass Cannon 2, same change as Glass Cannon 1. Golemify, same change as the dummy one, but it needs it less because Golemify is actually decent. Moonlight, underperforming a bit, gain more AD and AP. One for All, overperforming a bit, a little bit less damage amp per 1 cost. Overheal, underperforming a bit, gets some more bonus damage. Paint the Town Blue, this thing generates so much value.
Huge value.
The difference in a Rebel comp with and without this is pretty wild early. Early, it's really hard to beat this augment, so it's getting nerfed. Superstars, this should be red, not green. This is a nerf. This is going to be different. You can see I was making this in a hurry, by the way. This slide's
Rebels
a little off.
cloned.
Too much value. What this should say is 2 cost granted goes from 2 to 4. So too much value is getting buffed. Superstars is getting nerfed. And then finally, Warpath. Warpath is going to grant 1 less 5 cost, but a full item instead. The trade-off is worth it. Warpath is a fun augment. Just want to make sure the value is good. So getting 2 full items out of it should feel a lot better than just the 1 plus the gold.
Yep. And just to do the brief notes on it, they're nerfing a bunch of the overperforming reroll augments, which makes sense. I was told Overheal was bugged, but whatever. I don't know if it is bugged. That's probably just misinformation. What else? Oh, Crimson Pact. That's pretty big, right? The 3 to 5 is a pretty big mana buff, and so they're buffing every hero augment, so just keep an eye out for hero augments. I think the too much value from 2 to 4 is a huge buff because that gives you 2 free rerolls. Theoretically, should give you 2 free rerolls that you can stack every turn for as long as you want to do it, and maybe even more. And that's really powerful early game if you can just stack all those rerolls for like a really big reroll composition. So this might actually turn into an insane reroll 2-1 spot if you have the setup for it. So just keep that in mind. And then, yeah, I mean, everything else makes sense here.
Prismatic. Exalted Adventure. Light change here. Instead of a duplicator now and every stage, it's just the next 3 stages. So total duplicators, a little less, and 1 less early on. Anger Issues. This is probably the last buff it's going to get. If it's still garbage after this, we'll probably just remove it. But it's a big buff. 10 more armor and MR per Ginsu's. And another 0.5 AD and AP per stack. If it's not good now, it's never going to be good. So,
okay. You know what augment it might? You know what it actually might be good in? It might be good in trolling. Or like something like that, like where you can capitalize off the armor and MR and it's not that big of a deal. So maybe you could do it in like Trundle, trolling, 3 Rage Blades. I mean, the thing is you're getting a bunch of AD, AP, or AD anyways, so maybe it's not efficient. But like, there's got to be something. There's got to be something with Anger Issues. This is a justified nerf. This augment's way too good.
Artifactory. Let's talk about this one. Right now, we like that artifacts are strong. We like that when you get one artifact, like a Fishbones Nocturne or a Trenchcoat, you know, or a Wits End Kog'Maw, you're like, sweet, good stuff. The problem is when all of a sudden you start getting 2 artifacts, 3 artifacts, 4 artifacts, it starts to get out of control. And we like that, like, those create really exciting high moments, but we want those to be rare, right? Like a game where you start with Jace and then get Portable Forge. Cool, I got 2, that's neat. Or, you know, you got a loot subscription and you happen to get a game where there were 2 of them in there. Cool. But a single augment that says, here's 10 is too much. Yeah. We're going to put a pretty big lasso, like we're going to stop how often you can get tons and tons of artifacts. Living Forge is probably the new cap, right? Living Forge gives you 3 artifacts in a game. That's a lot, but it's good. We'll probably never go higher than that though. So don't expect Artifactory to come back. Don't expect What the Forge to come back. It puts us in a position where we have to keep gutting the artifacts for this.
Yeah.
So we want to keep artifacts fun. To do that, we can't give you 10 of them. This is the trade-off. So Artifactory is gone. I know people are going to be like, but you're taking away the fun.
Yes.
The point is to keep them fun for the most cases, not just a single artifact. Because I don't want to have to nerf them 10 times over because this exists. So,
I think that Artifactory would be so fun if TFT was a single player game. I think this would actually be one of the best augments ever made for it because people would love it. Like for example, Talker's Trials. If Talker's Trials ever comes back as like something that people want to play either like by themselves or cooperatively. I think they should bring back Artifactory. I think it's just like really cool. People love these kind of like ridiculous things that sets up like insane theoretical ceilings. One of my favorite, I don't know if you guys play Slay of Spire, but there's a relic in Slay of Spire called Dead Branch, which when you exhaust a card, which is basically like basically destroying a card for that fight, you get a random card. And so it creates like insane combinations where you can do like ridiculous high combo power, super high ceiling stuff. And I think Artifactory kind of creates like really big moments in TFT, but it's at the expense of like the 7 other players in the lobby. So I actually think that I'm kind of sad because I do think the combo of artifacts are really interesting, but they are very unhealthy because when they just create a lot of play patterns, like for example the triple snipers focus type of stuff on Nocturne is just really unhealthy. But yeah.
Belt overflow, a little more health per belt. If you're a bruiser player, enjoy. Bronze for life. I know the challenger players will rant and rave about this augment and how good it is. It looks decent. It doesn't look insane. So we went with the light buff here, less durability per trait. But it makes really fun comps. Like, we want this augment to be good.
He's not wrong.
But yeah, right now our data doesn't match how anecdotally hyperbolic people are being about it, but for now, light nerf.
I mean, how is that our fault? Like, we don't have any stats to actually correct us on that. Just saying. But no, he's not. You know why? In my opinion, is because people. You know why? It's because this comes down to the fundamental thing that haunts every Twitch streamer, actually at least every TFT Twitch streamer, is that it's not about the number of traits you're playing. It's really not. It's really not, you guys. Just because you can get one extra trait in doesn't mean you should play Draven over like a Vi. Like, you know, like people are gonna be like, oh my god, you can get one more trait in if you get like this Draven 1, it activates Conqueror too. And it's like you haven't stacked any Conqueror and you're playing a Draven 1. The reason why Bronze for Life stats don't look that good is because people fundamentally overvalue activating the number of traits on their board, and so they're not actually thinking about, is their board good? They're just staring at the left side of their screen and rubbing their nipples. Like, that's all they're doing. They're not actually building a board. They're just watching the CVS pharmacy receipt list grow longer and longer and longer. They're not even playing TFT. They're just like, oh my god, but look at my trait web. I do that even without Bronze for Life. That's why the stats don't even look that good. But I promise you, and this is not to more, but this is to everybody else. This augment is so broken. But it's whatever. They're nerfing it. Thank you.
Build-A-Bud, 2 more gold, minor buff. Calculated enhancement, 5 more AD, 10 more AP. Should make this better. Dark Alley dealings, same thing as Artifactory. We just don't need that many artifacts. It's going away. Expected unexpectedness. This augment needs to be fun, like Call to Chaos, and right now it's underpowered and not as fun. Hitting 7 rerolls on 2/1 feels so bad. We're upping that to 10. Hitting 2 4 costs or 2 5 costs feels really like it's just below the bar for a prismatic. So
yeah.
It's getting a pretty sizable buff here. 10 rerolls at least.
Make it a gold.
3-star 4 cost, 3-star 5 cost. If it needs more than this, we'll give it. But yeah. Family.
I mean, I feel like they could just like tune down the numbers and make it a gold augment. They did magic roll. It feels something like that. Just make it a gold augment and tune down the numbers a little bit so it just feels more reasonable.
Crown no longer grants a Violet and Evander. Cool. Flurry of blows, more crit chance. Great. Ghosts of Units Pass. This is probably the last change this augment will get. Otherwise, it might get cut because it's still a weird pattern. But obviously, it was insane. Now it's kind of bad, so we're trying to get it to good here. So HP per stack goes up by 1. AD per stack is now 1. Also just makes it nicer to look at.
Yeah.
Subscription service gives you 2 more gold, help you afford those 4 costs.
Yeah, that's nice.
So you're not just econ starved for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Sword overflow. The AS per sword goes up by 0.5. Same with wand overflow, so those get helped. Trait geniuses, the Echo and Heimer one. This gets a buff here, and hopefully with the Echo buff makes this pretty good.
Yep.
And then Void Swarm. This one's weird. I'm not a fan of Void Swarm, but at least now you'll get it every 10 turns instead of every 11, which felt weird, and it's really hard to get to the 3rd one. So, yeah.
This is a pretty sizable buff, actually, because this might swing multiple placements for it. I actually think Voice Form's an underrated augment. I think some people think it's awful. There's a Reddit thread talking about how bad it was. I think it's actually fine, mainly because the most people don't understand what Void Swarm is really trying to do. It means that you don't have to build as many frontline items, and you can kind of build more offensive. And most people kind of play Void Swarm and just play standard. It just changes the way you approach the game. They buffed Deathblade, so sort of, I don't know. This is interesting because Geniuses is quite bad. If you actually, I talked about this a handful of times, but one more time as a PSA, some augment stats exist. If you go to traits and you just literally Control F for a trait like Unlikely Duo, you can see the average placement of it. If you look at Geniuses, it's terrible. It's a 4.99. It's a 5. So you can actually look at some augment AVPs. You can't look at what combos with it. If you click this, it doesn't show you more augments that go with it. But you can look at some things that go with it. I actually have played this augment and top 4 with it multiple times. So it's a fun augment because it lets you cook. Actually, I took Trait Tracker and I cashed out and I made Echo a sniper so that way he can actually get multiple casts. And it was actually pretty hype. But this augment's so hard to play. I don't know if this actually is enough to make it like a 4.5. It probably is gonna be like a 4.7 or something. Unless Echo's so overtuned that it's just like better. Also, I love that subscription service actually nerfs high rollers for once. Because there are some people who I swear their shops on their accounts are just better than mine. I know that's not true, but that's what I'm saying. And this actually nerfs them because when subscription service only gives 6 gold, they can't hold all of them, you know? So they have to suffer a little bit for high rolling. But now I guess they
11, which felt weird, and it's really hard to get to the 3rd one. So, yeah. And then Anomalies. Generally, the idea with Anomalies is we nerfed a couple at the top, we buffed a bunch at the bottom. They're actually looking pretty good balance-wise. It's close, but especially some of the more niche ones needed some love. So, Arcana overwhelming, 15 armor and MR.
Arcana?
As well as the MR to AP conversion goes higher. So this should hopefully open up some cool builds.
That's how you pronounce it?
Avalanche of armor, 20 more armor. Berserker Rage will now activate much sooner, so you don't have to go so low to get that triple bonus. Center of the Universe, more damage. We've got some bugs to fix with this one as well, but hopefully Center of the Universe can actually pump out some damage early. Defense Expert, more armor and MR. Energy Absorption, more AP per ally death. Laser Eyes. If Laser Eyes is ever going to be good, this is going to help. This is a 33% buff.
Huge buff.
Hopefully something like a Rumble with Laser Eyes can be pretty scary. Mini-Me's, this is also a pretty scary buff.
This is a huge buff.
Will now proc every 2 attacks instead of every 3. This is a massive buff for this.
Twitch Mini-Me's.
Keep an eye on Mini-Me's. If I had one I'm nervous about, it's this one.
Yeah.
So we'll see if this ends up being really good on like an AD champion.
Mini-Me's reduces armor as well, flat armor. So it's kind of like, it kind of has a similar effect of like Blighting Jewel, for example, but for AD. And then you have this on an attack speed carry like Twitch, who like naturally gets a burst of attack speed, and then like also, so it can get nasty real quick. So I am worried about this one. But it's good because AD anomalies are generally pretty bad this set. So I think it's justified that they're trying to make a lot of these much better. A lot of these make sense. A lot of them are just like not that good. Center of the Universe in general struggles with flat damage, but I didn't realize that there's some buggy interactions, so that makes sense to me.
Nothing wasted. If this is going to stick around, we'll see. But on ally death, gain 80 mana is not okay. So this is going to get nerfed a bit.
Yeah.
So now sometimes it'll be on ally death gain like 10 mana though, which could be pretty bad. So we'll see.
Yeah, this turns into like kind of like a little bit too volatile. But like this one, we learned this back in set 8 on ally death. Is just, the mana gain is insane with admin traits. So.
Repulsor, 5 more attack speed. Slime Time, more AP per proc. Ultimate Hero, it's still good with a 3-turn delay. Now it's got a 4-turn delay. We'll see. And then Wolf Familiars, they'll do more damage.
Do you think they're gonna nerf Ultimate Hero again? I mean, it is still good at 3, but like 4 is a lot. You're playing almost an entire stage without an anomaly, man. That's wild. Holy cow. Some people say Slime Time is good on Echo already. Now they're buffing Echo. They're buffing Echo's augments. They're buffing Echo's traits. they're buffing a theoretical good anomaly on Echo. We'll see.
We'll see. And then Wolf Familiars, they'll do more damage. And finally, to wrap it up, we fixed a typo with several of the outcomes with Wind Up Monkey. Scavenger could no longer rarely give you Radiant items. Finally fixed the last case where Hard Commit could give an emblem when it shouldn't.
Right.
And then lastly, because of when we did the whole evolved layer, Vander wasn't properly in there, so there were no Vander encounters. So Vander encounter is back and now at the proper rate. So I know some of you don't like Vander, some of you do, but he'll be back. So there you go. Like I said, we have so much content that even when you try to keep the patch small, it ends up very big.
Yeah.
This feels like a very big patch, but all the changes themselves are pretty minor. I don't expect radical meta shifts from this. That's not the goal. The goal is a few more lines playable, stuff like TF, Enforcer a little bit more reliably, Firelight, Scrap, Echo, Ambusher, stuff like that. But we'll see. And then, like I said, 13.4 is where you'll get some more of the number changes, text changes,
the balance thrashing that everyone's going to accuse the patch of.
There you go. All right. Happy 2025, the first patch of many. We got a lot to do, so hopefully you guys are enjoying Into the Arcane and having fun.
All right. Thank you, more dog.
That's going to do it for me.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Big M. Big MD. All right. I didn't even know Scavenger can give rating items. So overall, we actually did a poll on the patch. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Looks like 72% thumbs up. Some people are just on the fence, and then a few people said that they voted thumbs down, mainly because they just weren't sure. Now that I've read this, now that I've gone through this twice, I feel like I'm very much in tune with what's coming out in the patch. I think for the most part, thumbs up on like a lot of the changes, like in terms of like what they're trying to do. I don't know if it's gonna be like I don't know if it's not gonna radically shift the meta. There's some things that could theoretically dominate. Like I just don't know how much this mana buff on Twitch is gonna impact things. That's a huge mana change. For example, also. If Chem Baron is like unplayable, that actually does change the dynamic of certain lines, because right now, if Artifactory is gone, if Chem Baron is gone, that does create a different meta entirely, because now all of a sudden Lose Streak becomes much more viable, so that actually shifts around lobby dynamics a lot. But part of it is that there's like a handful of Exodias that just like gate you from being able to do anything, which just cuts off certain playstyles, certain compositions. So I think just by the nature of Artifactory being disabled, Lone Hero Lux being disabled, Chem Baron getting big nerf, and if let's just assume Chem Baron is just not as playable. I mean, it probably is, but let's just assume that. 6 Autom getting nerfed. I think there is going to be a pretty big shift. I just don't know what that is. It's hard to say. Maybe Scrap ends up being dominant because the shield's in a big. Maybe it's like 6 Artillers destroys every lobby because that trait already is good. It didn't even get buffed. Who knows? Maybe Zeri rules OP. But either way, it's a pretty sizable patch, and I'm just ready for something different, man. Like I know that this is actually a great holiday patch. Just like look at it. We've never actually had a holiday patch feel like this ever, and so I think that I'm just ready for something different though. Like we've been playing the same patch for so long. And we need Riot to change things so that way you guys can come to TFT Academy and feel like it's different, because it feels like it's been the same thing for like 3 weeks on this website. So we need to get the view count up, boys.